Welcome to Tracking the Cats, your bi-weekly podcast on all things Catamounts with your co-hosts, Steve White over there in one corner, myself, Bob Sabin, in the other. And as always, we are brought to you by Stanberry Insurance. They've got 4 offices now, one in their main office in Silva, Highlands, Clyde, and Waynesville. So if you ever need any insurance help, the folks there will be glad to take care of you at good prices. Today, we've got a great guest on here. We're pretty excited because this guy has helped bring the Catamounts to a strong position in the Southern Conference. We started out a little slow at 0-3, but we've come roaring back with 5 straight wins. And he was the driving force behind an offense that's ranked number 1 in the Southern Conference and number 7 nationally. Today, we have offensive coordinator Rylan Wells. Welcome, Rylan.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, Rylan's in his second year as our offensive coordinator, replacing Cade Bell, who left us to go to Pittsburgh before last season. Came to Cullowhee before the 2021 season from Tusculum over in Tennessee. He was first, I think, our tight ends and fullbacks coach before becoming the coordinator last winter, actually in January of 24. He's been a part of our offensive coaching staff that's broken total offensive records for the 3 straight seasons, consistently topped the Southern Conference offensive numbers, and as a player was an outstanding quarterback at Jacksonville University for Coach Kerwin Bell. Just how can you believe that? You know, they were together again. But so they go back a long ways, several seasons ago. But Coach Bell, great to have you. Excuse me, Coach Wells, great to have you with us. And I know that connection is awful tight between the Bells and the Wells.
Yeah, so what was it
is.
like playing for Coach Bell back in Jacksonville? How has he got the same intensity? Is it more so? Tell me what's changed since you played for him, and what was it like playing for him?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. The only thing that's really different, I mean, he still has the same fire and, is still the most competitive guy on the field probably when we're between the lines. But the only difference is, back then he was calling plays, and he was a head coach. So he's, not quite the same in that regard, and it's definitely different now in today's world of football where there's so much going on for a head coach. I find it, I think it's got to be hard for some of those guys that still do that. But he's still the same guy, that I played for, and he's gotten a little older. We all have, but he's still the same, Coach Bell that he was in 2013 when I walked on campus as a freshman. So and I enjoyed it. I think the thing that anyone loves when you're coaching for him as a coordinator or when you're playing for him as a quarterback is that he's never going to hold back. He's never going to hold his coaches back and be as aggressive as possible. So you're never going to think, man, we're just trying to get through this game and, play slow and, try and hold back the reins. I mean, that's never going to happen. And he's going to be the first one to tell me, coaching now, that, we've got to take some shots. We've got to be aggressive if he feels like we're not being aggressive enough. So I think that's one thing that I love playing for him and, coaching for him, having that freedom and having a guy telling me, let's go be aggressive, don't hold back is definitely gives you a lot of freedom, gives you a lot of confidence going into any game, whether you're playing or coaching for him. So definitely the same guy.
Oh, Coach, how did you get to Jacksonville University down in North Florida from Fort Mill, South Carolina? What was the connection? I think I know what it is, but I want you to tell everybody what it is.
Heck, I really didn't have anything going on hardly at all when I was in high school. Fort Mill is not known for football, I can tell you that. I don't think they've ever won a playoff game in history. So, but I think my grandpa, I think, just sent Coach Bell my tape, and the next thing I know, I got a phone call from him. So I think that was pretty much all that happened, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I went down there.
Talking about your grandfather now, a lot of people, I don't know if they know this or not, but I know him well because of my connection with the University of Florida and so forth. And he's a Hall of Famer, college football Hall of Famer, a great coach at the University of Tennessee, won a couple of Southeastern Conference championships. Went to Florida as the head coach, which was really interesting there, two teams in the same conference after him, beating the Gators so many times when he was at Tennessee, and goes down there and has some great seasons at the University of Florida. In fact, I was in graduate school when he came to the University of Florida. I was a graduate assistant there in the athletics department when he replaced Coach Ray Graves back in 1970. So we go back just a little bit way, and I've met him and talked to him at games earlier back when Rogan was quarterbacking for us. And I don't know if he still comes to the games or not, Rylan, but yeah, that's quite a connection you have there. Quite, I guess, DNA as far as being a quarterback is concerned with Coach Dickey.
Yeah, he doesn't. He hasn't. I don't know if he's been to a game since, and maybe one time and at Citadel or something a couple of years ago. That's a little bit closer for them to drive up. He lives in Jacksonville, so
Right.
but no, he doesn't drive. He doesn't travel much. I think, but he still watches all the games on the computer and calls me. I probably talk to him twice a week about it, leading up to the game, and then probably Sunday after. But I think the only thing he's traveled to recently, that I think they had some kind of ceremony in Knoxville. I think 2 weeks ago at the Arkansas game. A bunch of the family was there. I think it was when we were playing Furman.
Yeah.
They were all over there. Some kind of statue or something. So I'm sure that was cool to be at.
Yeah. I was at his press conference when he actually took the job at the University of Florida back in,
Okay.
and that's, yeah. So go back a long ways with him. Yes.
Yeah. No, but it's I mean, he's 93, 92,
Wow.
and he's still, I mean, sharp as a tack, so plays golf all the time. And I think he's finally given up gardening. He was still doing that, but he's had a couple injuries doing it. So giving that up a little bit, but he probably could still run a team if he needed to.
So your coaching career spanned more and more years now, and you've worked with a number of different coaches. Do you find any that were particularly influential, and how do you relate and learn from that?
I would say, I mean, I think anyone I've ever played for or coached with, I mean, even going back to Pop Warner football, I mean, there's always something you take with you. But I definitely think, college, playing for Coach Bell is kind of where my love for the pass game and spreading the ball around and that kind of stuff, where I kind of fell in love with that. And then obviously playing for it. And then, I played for Coach Bell for 3 years, and then he left and took the job at Valdosta. And I played for a completely different style team for Ian Shields, he was offensive coordinator at Army, and Lenore Ryan before that. So at the time, I didn't really know, I didn't know if I was going to coach or not, but I played a little bit of option quarterback in high school. But I think ultimately that kind of helped me out in the long run, coaching wise, of just being a part of two completely different styles. And Coach Shields is definitely a different style head coach than Coach Bell is, but I think you can kind of take ideas and philosophies and kind of combine them all together in your own way. And I think that's kind of between those two guys is kind of how I've got to where we are. I think it's still mostly Coach Bell's offense, and we're still going back and are going there every week. Probably seems like, and say, hey, you remember what we were doing back in, 10, 12 years ago? Like, I think we could do that this week or something, but I think it all stemmed probably from those two guys, though, Coach Shields and Coach Bell. Obviously, I started coaching for Coach Shields as a GA, which was good. And I think my first year I was coaching with the O-line, which is probably the best thing I could have ever done. So, but those two guys are where I learned a lot from. And then obviously, Cade, we still talk all the time about ideas and stuff.
But you also have to work with your DC, and it's Jerry Odom right now, and you've worked with him before. How's that going?
That's good. I mean, I love Coach Odom. I mean, he was, one of the guys that recruited me. He recruited my brother And heck, when we were at Tusculum, Rogan was there with us too. So
Yeah.
it's, it wasn't like it was completely foreign to go with Cade up to Tusculum, and it wasn't like it was a whole new, bunch of new faces. I mean, it's Coach Odom that was the guy that I played for. I was on scout team as a freshman, getting them mad at me, So
Yeah.
he's still just like Coach Bell. He's still the same guy he was, in 2013 when I was a freshman. So he's as competitive as they get, and he's, they do a lot of great stuff on defense. Some of the most competitive days we have aren't on Saturdays. They're, in a good on good period during practice during the week. I mean, those are some of the most competitive parts of the
Right.
week for us.
Coach, you're talking about your brother Rogan. Any like rivalry there, and what's he doing now? I've sort of lost track of him, but has ever been a rivalry between you and Rogan?
I don't know about a rivalry. I mean, he was probably a better player than I was. That's probably why there's not much of a rivalry. But he's in Charlotte. He's married and is working for True Homes, kind of a construction deal. But he's fine. He's doing good. I think that he came up to one of the games earlier this year, and I think they'll be at the Mercer game. So looking forward to that. Usually we have good luck when he's in town. So
Yeah,
hopefully
so
that'll bode well for us.
that's great. Yeah.
Well,
Let's talk a little bit now about
Probably our only
yeah.
our only rivalry would be when we're playing golf.
Yeah, okay, all
that's great.
right. Well, I want you to know that I played yesterday and I broke my age. So anytime I do that, I have a big party here at my house and all that stuff. So I actually shot in the 70s yesterday. So that was, take it with a grain of salt. That was over at Smoky Mountain Country Club. So it's a little bit different. It's not like playing it at Augusta National or anything.
Yeah.
Let's
Hey,
talk
you
a little
still
bit
have to
about,
hit that
yeah.
one and put it in.
Let's talk a little bit about Taryn Dickens, Tiger, your current star pupil. Just what makes him special, his uniqueness, just being able to adjust to defenses like he did down at Wofford when they were running those 6 guys 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. Just talk about him. What we don't see here that you see in every day in practice.
I mean, the list probably could go on forever. I think for him, it's just the way that he sees the defense. We always try and talk about, when we're running a pass play, which obviously we do plenty, but you can't lock on to receivers. You've got to see the defense and know where your guys are going to be, right? And I think he does that probably better than a lot of people. And then on top of that, he's probably the most accurate quarterback I've ever been around. He just when it's there, he just doesn't miss, and that can be the difference, in games, and especially you're talking third down situations. Probably the biggest difference for us, and we talk about all the time, is he just. I think a really really good quarterback makes a big difference on third down, and I think that's been a big difference for us since he's been back. Being able to use his legs on top of it, he does it all at a really high level, and he's the ultimate competitor. So if things aren't going well, he's going to make sure his competitive fire that he has, kind of like how Coach Bell is, just breeds into everybody else. And it forces everyone to feel like, man, we're not doing good enough. We've got to play better. If this guy's going to be this good and he wants to win this bad, how can I be any different than that? And you just see it when he goes out there. He's just on a different level, competitive with his competitiveness, and he's just so accurate with the football. Those are things you just can't coach, So that's what makes him him. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and he gets hit a lot in games, but he's tough as nails, and he's a competitor, and he's going to do whatever it takes to win.
Well, we love having him. He's fun to watch. But you've got some other stars on the team on your offensive side of the ball that have performed pretty well lately. James Tyre being one of them, taking over for AJ Colombo. What are you thinking about these guys in the receiving position that are, you talk about with Tiger's pass completion ratio? Well, he's got to have good receivers to have those numbers.
Yeah, no, we preach to him all the time. It doesn't matter how good you are, how well you can throw it. If the O line doesn't block and those guys don't run the right routes or they don't get open, you're not going to throw any touchdowns. You're not going to look good anyways. So he definitely has guys around him that are doing that. I think James is obviously probably the biggest. I don't know if he's not a surprise to me, but maybe to everyone, on the outside looking in. I've seen it, from spring ball, fall camp. I mean, being one of the most consistent guys if you look at the receiver production in practice. And if you ask even, I always tell Coach Bell, say, hey, why don't you go ask Ken Moore, who's probably the best cover guy on our team, all conference nickel, and say, hey, ask him who he thinks the hardest guys are to guard, and he'll tell you James Tyre's within the top two probably, which to me means a lot. I mean, Ken's really good, and if he's saying James is hard to guard, then that's, he should do really well in the SoCon. There's not many guys like Ken Moore that we're going to go against. He's just so. I think you really noticed it in the Citadel game. The game is just so slow to him, and he just understands leverage. It just feels like him and Tiger. The game moves so slow, and they almost have like a telekinesis deal going on where they're just on the same page. And yeah, it's hard to explain. It's just one of those things. He's just a really good football player. He's not going to run a 4.4. He's probably a 4.6 guy. He knows how to get open, kind of like a Cooper Kupp type guy. And just because you run fast doesn't mean you're going to be a good receiver. Doesn't mean you can get open. The separation at the top of your routes, understanding how to set guys up. I mean, he was a basketball player, point guard, a quarterback. So I think, you learn a lot in those kind of games, playing point guard, understanding how to control your tempo, and he does a really good job of that. I think it's funny talking about Tiger's completions in the Wofford game. We didn't even know he was doing that till after the game. Heck, there was a point where I was probably yelling at him for doing something he shouldn't have done, and as you go back and look at it, be like, "Well, I'm an idiot," because the kid just completed 46 straight passes. They're yelling.
Well, you've got a lot to talk about on the offense as well with your receiving corps, with your running backs as well. On the coaches show on Monday, I heard Coach Bell talk about how his running backs also need to be able to catch passes. And some of those guys have really stepped into play over the last couple of games and given us a more diverse offense. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I think they've done a really good job. I mean, I think going into the season, that was a position we were like, I mean, how are you going to even, what do you do? That's probably the deepest room on the team. And I think somebody that was kind of underlooked going into the season was someone like Markel. I think is kind of hard to explain because no one had seen him play besides, me and Coach Small, Coach Bell probably, because he didn't really do much his freshman year. And, we've got quite a few guys that are new coaching staff wise. So I think and I couldn't even explain I didn't even know how to describe him. I said, you'll just have to wait and see. Like he's not going to wow you, but it's just going to be something where it's like he just finds a way to get yards, and he just is hard to bring down, and he's good out of the backfield. He's great in protection. I think I knew, we all knew Kamari was going to be a good player. He was 2 years ago, and he's a bigger guy, so he definitely helps us out in certain situations. And in the Sanford game, he had like 100 yards receiving, right? So I think they all have to have, they can't just be one dimensional. And I think that's just how the game of football is now. Even if you look at the NFL, I mean, there's very few teams that are just playing guys that, are just handed off to them and they can't do anything else. They're all catching the ball again, and that's how we want to play. We want to spread the ball out and give them the ball with space. A guy like Pat Boyd, when he's in space, I mean, I know he's going to make the first guy miss, right? So, and that's really any of those guys. That's their only rule in my book is you got to make the first guy miss, right? If you can't do that, then we got to go with somebody else probably. So.
Coach, you're coming up the bye week going on, of course, right now, and I have different opinions on that. Whether it helps a team, injuries and stuff like this, or it maybe stops your momentum, maybe getting some players back. Just what are y'all doing this week during the bye week here to make this a better football team?
I mean, we're really, we treated it pretty standard. There's definitely some guys that you we're probably banged up. I think it probably hit at the right time for us. Some guys that probably needed to rest, maybe got some limited reps this week. But, I think when you're doing that, you're also getting some guys that, maybe you're talking about maybe you redshirt this guy, but then now he's getting a lot of reps this week, just to see where he's at, keep him involved, and, understand that at any point someone could go down. So this week of stealing some reps for some guys like that, you never know what their role is going to be in 2 weeks. So I think it's been pretty standard. I think, like I said, I think it came at the right time because I think going on a 5-game win streak is so easy to kind of get complacent, and just think that that's just going to happen because it has happened 5 weeks in a row. So I think kind of getting this week to kind of get some of that stuff out of us maybe will be good. Kind of give them a couple of days off this weekend and then come back and have that fire again, understanding that we've got to go to work and go win a game. But I think it's, hopefully what we did, helps us out. I don't know if there's a perfect formula for a bye week or not, but I think you still find ways to get better during it. Just find ways to get guys healthy. Hopefully we get some guys back. I think like Jalen Terzado possibly could be back. He'd be a really good player next week. So we'll see. I think maybe 1 or 2 offensive linemen. It's always the big guys usually that are banged up that might need an extra week on an ankle sprain or something to be, as healthy as possible going into this stretch for us. So hopefully we got it right. We'll find out.
Yeah,
it
is a stretch too. I mean, we're going up against the number 2 offense behind you guys in the conference, and so that's going to be a challenge for our defense. But looking at their defense, how are you guys preparing to move forward against them? Because they're pretty good on defense as well.
No, I think they are a good team. They always are. I mean, they're always going to be one of the top, if not the most, talented roster in the SoCon. I mean, between them, us, ETSU. I mean, you're talking about the public schools in the SoCon. You should usually have a pretty talented roster just based on the talent pool you can pull from is a little different than Wofford and Furman. You can get some different kind of guys, right? And they're always talented. I mean, they're known for that. They've got a lot of history of being a really good team, and heck, it's in my opinion that's been a big rivalry for us since we've been here at Western. Is that game almost more than any other, just because it's been, besides the first year we were here, gosh, it's been a nail biter every single year, a one score game down to the last possession. But they're a good team. I think their D line is good. I mean, and it's hard to judge them based off their record. I mean, they played 2 teams that are, in the top 15 in the country.
Right.
That you may say early on, well, they got beat by those guys. But if you look at it now, I think Tarleton's number 3 team in the country beat a, Army team, and Tennessee Tech's obviously, really good team too. I think they're a good team. They'll have a lot of confidence coming off a big win versus ETSU, and then see how they do this week versus Sanford. If they play well in that game, then they'll have even more confidence, and it'll be a good game for us. So we'll have to come out and play our best regardless and take care of the football. So keys to victory never change, So we got to play our game and play at a high level.
Well, we're excited. Steve, you got anything else?
I just think that's good to hear from Coach Wells here and talk about this offense. And it's always exciting. Coach, now I'm still waiting for that Southern Conference championship. I've been around here since 1961 watching Western Carolina football. And the last time we won a conference championship, I was in the first grade back in 1949. So I'm ready for it. And I get excited this time of the year. So, we've had some close calls with our current coaching staff here, and they really have me excited this year. So let's keep on rolling.
Yeah, we'll take it one game at a time.
Coach, it's been great having you on. We appreciate it. Look forward to getting you back on either after the season's over or coming up on next year, because there's a lot to talk about, and we got only 4 games, but it's a long, hard slog before we get going. But,
oh, yeah. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much. And that'll do it to wrap up this version of Tracking the Cats podcast, brought to you as always by Stanberry Insurance offices in Waynesville, Silva, Clyde, and Highlands. So thanks for everybody, and we will talk again soon.